Hello and welcome to my world. I am Fred Kasdan. Normally 7 nights a week you can find me streaming over on my Twitch channel. That link can be found in the description below. I stream nightly. I don't take a night off, or at least I don't try to. Any which way, we're talking about Star Wars today, and while I could talk about the Rise of Skywalker, and I can easily spoil it, but then again, there are millions of other YouTube channels that probably have already done so. I will give my thoughts on it real brief. It is as bad as The Last Jedi. So with that said, we move forward. Now, as you can tell, I myself am not part of the target demographic for the modern Star Wars films. I am certainly not. Why? Because I am someone, while I am technically a millennial, I'm on like the older edge of that spectrum of what classifies as a millennial. I'm on that upper echelon. Plus I'm a white guy. I'm a white guy with who doesn't like to shave, who has wild unkempt hair and everything. I'm a dork. I'm a nerd. I'm someone who has one hell of a good memory when it comes to various things. Good and bad. So yeah, I know for a fact I'm not that target demographic that Disney wants. I'm not in that demographic that Kathleen Kennedy wants. I'm not in that demographic that J.J. Abrams and Rian Johnson wants. I am the antithesis. I am the anti-version of everything that they want. And they sure as hell have made that very clear to me. And other people like me who like Star Wars. Don't love it. I like Star Wars for the most part. And I'll tell you what the real issue is here. And my actual theory, though, on why there really is a divide between a lot of older Star Wars fans, folks of my age and older, versus a lot of the younger Star Wars fans who probably have a lot more appreciation for the mess that is the modern trilogy. And it's really going to come down to, quite simply, what you grew up with. Now, I want to take the long about way of explaining this from my perspective in terms of what I grew up with. I was born in the early 80s. So did not see the original films in theaters as they originally were presented. My first exposure to Star Wars were 3 Fox home video cassettes that my dad had and bought, and I don't think I saw those until maybe the late 80s. There were no Star Wars cartoons that I remember seeing on Saturday mornings. Hell, I remember what my go-to cartoons were: Ninja Turtles, Ghostbusters, and a few others. But those were the big 2. But there was no Star Wars. There was nothing Star Wars related in my household, in my toy collection, in my comic book collection, in my youth novel collections, young adult novel collections. There was nothing Star Wars related at all. Because for the most part, it didn't freaking exist. Yes, I know. Obviously, now looking back, there were Star Wars toys, there were Star Wars comics, there were some Star Wars books, but you compare that to everything else. You compare what was easily accessible on a day-to-day basis with just about any other franchise from the late 80s and early 90s. Star Wars was a non-entity as far as I was concerned. In comparison, it's like in the debate of Star Trek versus Star Wars, which was better? Star Trek was better because there was more of it. You had the TV show, you had the comics that DC was publishing, you had the toys from Playmates and everything. You had there were movies on a seemingly regular basis with Star Trek. Star Wars was a fucking dead franchise as far as I was concerned. All it was to me was 3 films. Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back, and Star Wars Return of the Jedi. The New Hope tagline didn't come along to me, folks, until when the original trilogy got that re-release in theaters. And when I saw all 3 of those films at the old theater that was near where the Pensacola Mart used to be here in South Jersey. Again, it gives you an idea how old I am in case that ain't clear enough to you folks. So with that said, Star Wars, again, it existed, I liked it, but there was nothing associated with it. That obviously changed slightly when the announcement came that they were going to re-release the films, as I just said, in theaters with new special effects and feature and experiences, so that people who have never had the chance of seeing Star Wars in theaters would have that opportunity, and they were using it as a straight up promotion for Star Wars Phantom Menace, the first of the prequel trilogy. Genius marketing, by the way. That was straight up genius. To re-release for a limited time the original films in theaters to build anticipation for the new film. So that was genius. And from around that same time, we started seeing more things come out that was Star Wars related. Shadows of the Empire, I believe, came out in the N64. And you started seeing more computer games, things of that nature. I think I didn't have an N64. I was more of a PlayStation PC guy. And the one Star Wars game that I particularly played a lot in that period was TIE Fighter. I did have that an appreciation for flight simulators back then. And I do know that there were the Super Star Wars games on the SNES, but I did not have a Super Nintendo, did not have an N64, so those games were did not exist as far as I'm concerned. I didn't have those systems. So again, if it wasn't everywhere to where I could easily get it, it did not exist as far as I was concerned. Now keep in mind here, the original trilogy hit theaters again. We're talking like I want to say 97, 98, 99. No, Phantom Menace came out in 99, so it was more 97, 98. So the sequel, the original trilogy in theaters and Phantom Menace in theaters. All right, and from that point, that kick-started basically for a whole other generation, folks growing up, and where Star Wars was really more easily accessible. There were more video games. You had folks who were maybe, let's say they were 8 years old when they saw Star Wars A New Hope Episode 4 in theaters when it got re-released in 97. So let's say they were 6, 7, 8 years old. They literally grew up with Star Wars. They're the ones who are probably out of the way fighting tooth and nail defending things like The Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker and everything of that nature. These are the Star Wars fans that are they are the Star Wars fans that's basically kept the franchise alive and going. And George Lucas and everything, they certainly catered to them a hell of a lot. Think about that. Because these were the ones that saw all 6 films in theaters. These are the ones that watched the Clone Wars. These are the ones that bought the books, bought the comics, bought the video games. These are the ones that have kept Star Wars The Old Republic MMO alive. Which is the only thing in terms of expanded media that still exists as it relates to Star Wars, because it still is something that brings in a good deal of profit for everyone involved. So when it comes to the trilogy, the modern trilogy, and everything associated with it, the Rogue One, Solo, it's not my generation. technically it's not my generation that those films are aimed at. They're not aimed at the millennials that are who are at this point in time rapidly approaching 40. I'm still a few years away from it. Myself, I'm hitting the big 40. So looking back at it with and taking into account that effect, it's no wonder that the sequel trilogy, the Mary suing of Ray, and everything associated with it in terms of Kill the Past and everything associated, it's no wonder it's being done the way it is, because they are trying to appeal to those Star Wars fans that are the ones that basically grew up with everything in one shot. That, again, that's not my generation. It's those who are in their 20s now. It's those who are in their teens now. Those who had access to everything from the get-go. So, and as I mentioned earlier on, I am not part of that demographic that Disney wants for Star Wars. I admit that. I'm fully aware of it. And hopefully, my little rant or my explanation of it on how I figured that makes sense to you. If not, oh well, it's my world. I can do what I want. Anyway, thank you for watching. If you watched this all the way to the end, again, you can catch me streaming live over on Twitch 7 nights a week. I hope you come over there. We'll chat, hang out, and have ourselves a good old time. Till next time, we'll see. Obviously, next week will be after Christmas, and we'll talk about whatever the hell comes to my mind. Have a good one, everybody.